Hi, I'm Samantha Spencer.
And I'm Anthony McConnell.
For our video project, we chose to interview students and teachers and ask teachers how prepared they think we are upon other questions, and ask students if they know what being abstinent is upon other questions as well. And here are our results.
Hi, I'm Rebecca, and I'm in the 8th grade.
Okay, we have we have 3 questions for you. How prepared do you believe you are to saying no and being abstinent?
Prepared?
Like pretty prepared?
Pretty prepared.
Okay, do you know what being abstinent means?
To not have sex and waiting.
Okay. Do you know what stop means? S-T-O-P.
Say no, tell an adult, offer an alternative, and promptly leave.
Okay. Thank you.
My name is Mr. Rickard and I teach 6th grade PE.
Okay, so we're gonna have a couple questions, and our first question is gonna be: how prepared do you think middle school students are for resisting bad influences or pressure?
How ready do I feel like they are for resisting bad influences and pressure, like from their peers?
Yeah.
From peers or like themselves?
Yeah.
I think, well, okay, I'm gonna step out for a sec. I think a lot of it has to do with the way they're prepared at home. So like if they get a lot of that good advice from the adults at home, then they usually are able to handle those things here at school. I think most students are prepared for, and then there's some that like are really super prepared, and then others that are ill prepared, if that makes sense. So there's always a range.
Yeah. All right. Second question is: do you think it's harder for middle school students to resist self-pressure or peer pressure?
Ooh. Again, it's going to be different for everybody. Like some kids are going to be more, it's self-pressure, but I think it's the peer pressure that's harder for them.
Okay.
And then do you think it's easier for high school students to resist bad behaviors and things like that, or middle school students?
Ooh. Well, I think it just changes. I think like in high school you have more independence and more freedom. So like you're driving a car now, and so there's going to be new ways to get yourself in trouble or to have pressures and things. So I don't think that it's more or less, I just think it's different. So there's less independence here in middle school. So you're gonna do silly things with friends that you can control. But then in high school, you just have a lot more crazy options.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Aaliyah Francisco, and I'm in the 7th grade.
Okay. So we have 3 questions for you. So do you know what being abstinent means? Like what it is and everything? Like what staying abstinent is?
It's like not coming to school, not being there, not learning anything from classes.
Okay. How prepared do you believe you are to saying no to like risky behaviors and being abstinent to them? Like whether not, like maybe not just risky behaviors, but like having bad influence in your life and things like that. Like how prepared do you think you are to saying no to those?
Saying no's not that hard for any behaviors.
Wait. What? Okay. Do you know what STOP means?
No.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So what does it mean?
It means stop?
Okay, I know. But like, do you know what the acronym for it is?
No.
Okay. S means say no. T is tell why. O is offer alternative, and P is promptly leave.
Beth Kitchen, 7th grade health teacher.
Okay. Hello. We have a couple questions for you. How prepared do you think middle school students are to resist bad influences / pressure?
I think that the brain anatomy proves that the frontal lobe, the first part for executive decision making, isn't really truly complete till at least between age 21 to 24. So knowing that, it makes it really hard sometimes for teens to make decisions. They're very capable of it, but they have to stop and think about things first, and that isn't always the case. And that's why we study decision making and looking at our goals and how to say no to things and resist. But I think it can be hard at times. I also think though that teens, we don't give teens enough credit. They have lots of great skills and do know right from wrong. It's a matter if they're going to follow it.
Okay. So,
Do you think it's harder for middle school students to resist self-pressure or peer pressure?
Okay. I think internal pressure actually is the key here. I think a lot of students don't realize that they put way more pressure on themselves, that actually, when the studies come out, far less students engage in risky behaviors. However, our society kind of, through media and all sorts of different influences, makes it seem like more people are doing things that are. And so sometimes I think teens put that pressure on themselves, like I'm the only one, or I'm the last one, or I have to hurry and need to grow up, which you don't. You have your whole life to grow up.
Yeah. Okay, so do you think it's easier for high school students to stay abstinent than middle school students? Or is
it can be done for both, but I believe developmentally, middle school students, they're at such a different range in puberty and emotions and hormones that for some students that's not even on the radar yet. And a lot of students aren't dating yet, or aren't driving yet, or being left alone where some of these things could happen, are going on dates. So I think middle school is a norm and something that is probably easier to think about as one way.
My name is Casey. I'm in 7th grade.
okay. So first question is, do you know what abstinence means?
What?
Do you know what
Abstinence.
abstinence means?
No, not at all.
Okay, so abstinence is like saying no. Is like saying no to risky behaviors, saying no to not skipping school, and things like that.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so our second question is, how prepared do you think you are to say no and be abstinent?
I think I'm pretty prepared.
And last and final question is, do you know what STOP means?
Stop?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
an acronym for like a different meaning. Do you know what the acronym is?
No.
Okay, it stands for, the S is say no, the T is tell why, the O is offer an alternative, and the P is promptly leave, and it is just a way to remember on how to be prepared in a risky situation. Thank you.
Mr. Burrell, 8th grade science teacher for the Douglas Firs.
Okay, so I have like 3 questions for you. How prepared do you think middle school students are to resisting bad influences, like / bad peer pressure or bad pressure?
I think they could be more prepared. I think some are prepared and some are not prepared. I mean, I know that's kind of an easy way out, but you just see that in some. So we can definitely try to prepare them more, but I think any kind of tool they can have would be better.
Okay. Do you think it's harder for middle school students to resist self-pressure or peer pressure?
I think it's harder to do peer pressure.
Okay. Last question. Do you think it's easier for high school students to stay abstinent or middle school students?
I would say that it's probably easier for middle school students because they don't usually have as much freedom.
Okay.
I'm Grace. And I'm Mel.
Hi. So, we have a couple questions for you guys. The first question is, do you know what abstinence means?
Or like what it is?
Yes.
Okay, so what is it?
Where you wait to have sex. Or you say no to having sex and risky behavior and stuff like that.
Just conserving yourself until you're ready.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so, how prepared do you believe you are to say no and be abstinent?
Very. Pretty prepared.
Pretty okay. And do you know what stop means?
STOP.
Say no.
Tell them why. Offer an alternative and promptly leave.
Yeah.
Amazing, correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so how prepared do you think middle school students are for resisting bad influence and like bad peer pressure? Like how prepared do you think we are?
How prepared do I think you are for avoiding peer pressure or for say it
Like
again?
resisting it,
For
saying no
resisting
to
peer
it, and
pressure?
things like that.
I think that middle schoolers right now have a lot of. Do I look at you or the camera? They have a
Doesn't
lot of
matter.
tools. It comes down to whether or not they use those tools.
Okay.
I think they have a lot of strategies. Yeah.
Do you think it's harder for middle school students to resist self-pressure or peer pressure?
Oh God. Is it a cop out to say both?
Yeah, just
I mean, I think it comes down to the kid because some kids are super like internally motivated and they put that pressure on themselves, and some kids are really externally motivated and they get that pressure from their peers. So I think it kind of depends on the kid.
And then last question, do you think it's easier for high school students to resist like all bad influence, or middle school students?
Which one's easier?
Yeah.
I think it's easier when you're in high school, because you're a little bit more mature, you have your goals set, and it's just a little bit easier to be the type of person you want to be in high school. In middle school, it's really easy to fall victim to your peers.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Miss Sachs. I teach 8th grade math for the Doug Fur team.
Okay, so we have a couple questions. I have a couple questions for you for health. How prepared do you think middle school students are to resisting bad influence and like bad peer pressure?
Prepared?
Yeah.
I think our kids are prepared. I think the trouble with kids in making decisions is comes with their their frontal lobe development. So like kids know lots of things and have like the right information to make good decisions, but sometimes our brains when we're that young aren't meant to make decisions well.
Okay. Do you think it's harder for middle school students to resist self-pressure or peer pressure? Like which one do you think is harder for them to resist?
I think it depends on the kid. I think some struggle with self-pressure and some struggle with peer pressure.
Okay, last question. Do you think it's easier for high school students or middle school students to resist the bad influences and the bad pressure? Like which one do you think it's easier for?
That's hard. I think high school students have harder pressures, but their brains are more developed, so they're more able to resist, but the things they're resisting are harder. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then middle schoolers, it's the things they're resisting aren't as risky, but your brains are less developed, so it's harder for you to resist those things. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Remember to just say no to negative and bad influences and just remember to use stop.